Well, for more on President Xi's anti-graft efforts, I'm joined by Cheng Li. He's Director and Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution's China Center. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So help us understand, why has it been so important economically for China to really focus on anti-corruption?
Well, what China needs is the middle-class consumption-driven growth, not like the corrupt officials that to stimulate the economy. Because these officials, they got the money, stolen money, not like thousands or even millions, but we talk about a couple of billions. In some cases, even more than 10 billion Chinese yuan, a couple of billion dollars, US dollars. So no economy can sustain with this kind of corruption, widely spread the corruption. It's such a large scale in some major cases. So this should be stopped, because otherwise you create a very unhealthy environment for domestic entrepreneurs and for foreign investors. So again, we see now the trend start to change. You see the middle class consumption, whether luxury goods or automobiles and etc. But the spending, the public asset is something that any country, all countries should avoid.
Now, what about this theory that the anti-corruption push is hurting retail sales?
Well, again, certainly you see some of the corruption related with this kind of stimulate, someone call, or lubricate with the economy, as some people argue. But I don't buy that argument. And China's growth and certainly is related with market economy and with the emergence of middle class. And the public spending and the corruption certainly sometimes could be important. But China reached that point, these kind of stolen of the public asset, it's a serious problem, and it's hurt China's economy. And rather than someone said that it contributed the decline or slowness of China's growth, and it's a fake argument.
Now, what about the sectors that have been most affected by this clampdown on corruption? Which are the ones that have seen the biggest impact?
Well, certainly you go to Macau and the gambling place, you see the GDP growth dropped, and the casinos GDP growth dropped, during the past few years. But again, that's actually, I think, it's good things. And so many local officials just spend tons of money in Macau or Las Vegas and etc. So now you see this kind of spending dropped significantly. But on the other hand, you do see the tourism, you see the healthy development in China, and in terms of the also housing market. You should stop the speculation, as Xi Jinping in the speech when he said that housing should be for people to live, not for speculation. You see the huge round of the applause, even from the delegates themselves.
So it's important to really see that the offsetting from some of the losses we saw from the corrupt activities are then being picked up from the legitimate ways.
Yes, I think that certainly the early stage there's some reflect, because also the government officials are not allowed to have the banquet, have some of the gifts and etc. These are the small things. From the beginning, it may hurt the economy a little bit, but this is the things eventually you should stop. So it's a pattern, it's the business model, it's also where really the consumption comes from. And that's very important. It should be from the private money, not from the state money, and certainly should not depend on official corruption. This is certainly definitely a wrong idea.
So then what are some of the ways to make sure that these initiatives are really followed through at the local level so that they actually reach the people who need it?
Well, first of all, there's more regulations, more monitoring, and also Xi Jinping's called 8 regulations is helpful. But eventually should move to the institutional development, the rule of law. So of course that in the past few years, still more emphasis on campaign method, to stop it, because this you buy time to regain the public confidence. It is necessary, but eventually should not based on this kind of parties, regulation, but rather to rule of law and institutional framework. So the idea to establish the National Supervision Commission and also the local level could be an important institutional arrangement, and to raise people's consciousness and also emphasize on rule of law.
So then how would you say the overall business landscape has changed over the last 5 years, especially with this push?
It's changed significantly. I would say that it's the different economic model, and now it's much healthy and more sustainable, and also that eventually will make the people, whether domestic entrepreneurs and foreign investors, to really concentrate on business rather than just the bribery or this kind of things. This is illegal, and so if you are foreign companies, if you're really serious about clean environment, that's a good opportunity for them. And I think that the past 5 years, the campaign certainly fixed that problem. More important, to regain the public confidence. Of course, no country can be immune from corruption. Right. So, but we do need to have a mechanism to stop this kind of, people may argue that the corruption-led economic growth, and that period, I think, is foregone.
So then, given the economic vision that Xi Jinping laid out in the work report, how do you see the next 5 years changing for the business landscape?
Well, as you said, domestically, you will promote more service sector development and more domestic consumption, and particularly help the small business and innovation-driven small business, including college graduates. But at the same time, Xi Jinping said that China's door is never closed, will be actually open wider for foreign investors. This is including the service sector development and market access, and also fair and free trade. And all these things, have helped China over the past 3 decades. But now China reached the next stage, and the openness and also, kind of free trade will come back. Now, this will enhance the public confidence domestically, but also in international investors. There's a lot of cynicism. They think that what happened in the 1990s, this kind of very conducive environment change. But of course, the China's competitiveness change
Right.
gradually enhanced. So for foreign investors, they should realize that also that you should do much better. But on the other hand, China's market is so huge,
right,
in terms of service sector, in terms of environmental protection, green GDPs, and public health. These are huge areas for foreign investors. I think, again, as Xi Jinping said, China should make the cake bigger, and which will allow foreign investors, especially from the United States, to share, and this should be win-win if you really believe the trade, and this is the great opportunity. I think that the past 5 years clean up some more problem. Next 5 years should be really a good period for economic growth.
Well, thank you so much for your insights. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Cheng Li, Director and Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institution's China Center.